One of the first questions that was asked is, are you taking this on a road show to other schools in Walton, other than Walton, to the Walton feeder schools? I actually received a phone call today, actually last week, and followed up today. I had a conversation today that other schools are interested in having a presentation like this. Mount Bethel approached us and said, can you come and talk about education funding and what it means to our school? So I think that there will be an effort made to not only have it happen in the East Cobb area, but I think that there's a goal to have this push, this education, raising an education all around Cobb County. And there's a hope. There's a group out there called Face It Cobb that's trying to raise awareness on what is going on with education funding. And it started in Cobb County. It actually started at Dodgen Middle School. But the goal is actually to get a Face It Gwinnett, a Face It Fulton, a Face It DeKalb, a Face It Rockdale, a Face It Henry, to get this, a Face It Cherokee, to get an awareness of what is going on. But right now, yes, there is an intention to bring this information to other schools in East Cobb and around the county.
You want to answer this one? Because that one will be one and also percentage of Cobb County tax.
One of the questions was, does a percentage of Cobb County tax revenue go to other school districts, and if so, can anything be done about that? This is called, it's called, yes, the short answer is yes. There is a percentage of the funds that are raised in Cobb County do go someplace else. Understand this, though, that there is a implied relationship between, or a relationship between the state and a county, that a local school system will kick in 5 mils of their tax revenue to help fund education. That's one part of the equation. And so there is the belief that there has to be a share that the county kicks in. So the first 5 mils that are raised by our school property taxes do go to the state, or the state looks at that and says, okay, that's how much you've earned. They don't swap checks back and forth, but they basically say you raise 5%, and that's your portion that would go to the state. Off to the side is another thing called equalization, and a lot of people hear about equalization and they go, what is that? And why is that? So you have this portion, which is the county's contribution, and our 5 mils raises over $100 million. Is that correct, Scott? We raised over $100 million. So we sent like about $141 million, I think, last year. $131 million to the state last year that we contributed towards education for the state of Georgia. That is what our first 5 mils raised in education funding, in the property taxes that you pay for towards education. Other counties raise, and we're capped that we can only charge up to 20 mils on your property value to support the school education. So our portion that the county gets to use is anything above the 5 mils that we collect. Then over here we have what we have called equalization. And equalization is actually a different animal, but a lot of times they are confused. And equalization says, what does an average mill raise in the state of Georgia? And it takes what 1 mill raises in all the different counties and all the different areas and comes up with an average. And if you are above that 50% average, then your money is basically you are considered a donor county. And if what 1 mil in your county raises is lower than that 50 percentile, then you will receive funds from the state. But it is not to be confused with the 5 mils that everybody pays in. And that's why I wanted to try to, I know it's very confusing, but when you hear equalization, they're really two separate animals.
One of the questions is, will Walton lose teachers in 2014-2015? We have been told that the county realizes they have balanced the budget largely on the back of teachers for the last 4 years, and they will do everything possible not to cut teachers for 2014, 2015. So while the budget has not been decided, they're just working on it at the present time. This is a good time to let the school board hear that you certainly do not want teachers to be cut this coming year. So again, I can't suggest that to you, but in answering this question, it will be determined with the county budget, and they are the ones that will be considering the county budget. I can share this with you. I toured some schools last Wednesday with our Superintendent Hinojosa, and this was a little bit of a planned ploy as we went to a high school, and I said to him, let's step into this classroom where there aren't any students right now. I had looked in first. And we stepped in, and there were 35 desks in that room, literally right next to each other, with room to walk down 2 different aisles and slide into seats. And I said to him, we're supposed to be teaching students in activities, and we're supposed to be getting them all engaged in groups, and tell me how that could happen in this classroom. And he said, well, it would be pretty hard. It's hard for me to go down the aisles of the classroom. So I just want to speak on behalf that he is aware of it, and I think everybody is working very hard to decrease the class size or not to let it increase this coming year.
Your turn, sir.
We have a question. Just speak right into it, okay? We have a question about the core curriculum. Doesn't federal dollars go to states embracing the core curriculum? Do we here in Georgia? The dollars are through Race to the Top, which was a national competition. Georgia was one of the winners. 26 of the districts in the state are participating in Race to the Top, and so they have received some federal dollars through Race to the Top to support the implementation of the new curriculum standards. The state has also used, and I can't speak to specific details, but I know the Georgia Department of Education has used some of those Race to the Top dollars to support the implementation of the core across the state. That grant is winding down, and that is the only dollars, I believe, those are the only federal dollars that are available to support the implementation of the core. So I hope that answers the question about the core.
Can I answer one?
I can.
Question is, can you explain the process required to repeal or modify the senior tax exemption? The senior tax exemption, for those of you who are not familiar with it, says that if you're over 62, that you don't have to pay property taxes towards education. So that was put in place by, the way that works is it was initially local legislation. Local legislation says that our COB delegation is comprised of all of the senators and representatives who have any precincts in Cobb County. So that comprises our delegation. So Senator Hill, Representative Cooper, Representative Parsons, all the different senators and the state senators and state representatives that are in Cobb County represent that delegation. That delegation can offer what's called local legislation that affects only their county or their area. Years ago, that was put in place. They offered this up as, initially it was believed to be sort of an incentive to keep the seniors here. So they offered it up. It is not something that the school board has any say over. They don't have this much. They have no say over that. It has to be local legislation that is introduced by a majority of the senators and representatives in Cobb County. So if it is going to be modified in any way, shape, or manner, there would have to be a discussion, and the legislators would have to vote, and then what would happen is they would have to take it to the General Assembly, and the General Assembly would have to get a majority in both the House and the Senate for that legislation to pass.
Okay, if you want to address that, do you have one to talk about?
can talk about the comparison.
You're giving me this one. Why are you giving me this one? Go ahead.
We have two questions about how does Georgia compare to other states and nationally in terms of the loss of funding. I don't have specific numbers. Excuse me. One of the questions was how does Georgia compare to states like North Carolina, New Jersey, Virginia, and New York? Of those 4 states, I know that we had been spending slightly more than North Carolina, less than New Jersey and New York, and frankly, I'm not sure about Virginia. I suspect that we spend less than Virginia. I think this kind of gets to the question of does funding matter, because there are significant differences between states in how much is invested. Generally, states that spend more, do have higher achievement. It's not absolute. There's not a perfect linear relationship between it. If you're spending dollars ineffectively, adding more dollars is not going to suddenly make that effective. But dollars are, and the empirical research is clear about this. Dollars are an essential component to effective practice. And certainly, I think New Jersey can show us that in some of the things that they have done, and other states as well, North Carolina, Connecticut, that have used their resources in very strategic ways. Several of them have made early childhood a key priority and have really made significant investments in ensuring the quality of early childhood programming. They've also made significant investments in teacher quality, looking at how teachers are trained, looking at teacher certification requirements, just across the board. Connecticut has a significant, a statewide induction program. Here in Georgia, as part of the Race to the Top, the state did work with its 26 Race to the Top districts to create a research-based induction program for new teachers. We know the research is clear. High-quality induction helps improve student achievement. It retains teachers and helps them be more effective as teachers. There are no state dollars in that. So when those Race to the Top dollars go away, districts cannot have that induction program. I've kind of gone down a tangent. But yes, dollars matter. And we do see that states that spend more do typically have higher achievement.
Are you planning an initiative to add or increase existing or alter tax programs, i.e. SPLOST? For those of you, SPLOST is actually handled differently if it's if it's an education SPLOST or if it is a SPLOST that the county passes. So if it's a county SPLOST, it can only be it's under the jurisdiction of the county to determine, and it's a state statute, and how those funds if they get changed or how that works, how those funds can be used, it can be changed by a simple law change. The education SPLOST is different. The education SPLOST is written into our Constitution. In that SPLOST, or in that legislation, SPLOST funds may only be used on capital projects, and that originally was defined as something that lasted longer than 7 years. It could be, there was a question about whether textbooks fell in there, and that was decided as a court case that yes, textbooks could qualify and technology will qualify. So there have been a lot of cases that have modified that, but the reality is that SPLOST can only be used for capital projects. It can't be used for maintenance and operation. It can't be used for teacher salaries. It can't be used for all those things that we might like to use it. There is actually legislation going on downtown during the session that was introduced at the last session to introduce a constitutional amendment that would allow actually up to 75% of a SPLOST to be used for maintenance and operations, including teacher salaries. That legislation didn't move last year, and there was discussion about whether it would get modified or whether there would be it would be dropped and new legislation would be introduced. But there has been. But if that were to pass, even if it passed in the legislature, then it would not be on the ballot for constituents to vote on until November of 2014 to allow changes in how a SPLOST could be used, and then local systems would have to make the decision whether they want to put it on a ballot initiative. We just passed a SPLOST, so we are not going to be looking at changing a SPLOST in the near future. So that's just how and I don't know of any other initiatives that are going on about that.
We're going to answer a couple more questions, or to attempt to answer them, and then because we have been here for quite some time, and I know we promised you it would be an hour meeting, we're going to put the other questions online and answer them through the PTSA website. So the first question that I would like to try to answer is, will there be more online courses offered in light of the class size issue? We're working on that. As we visited Boston, we visited MIT because they are the experts at distance learning. And there is a big difference between online courses and distance learning. And what we want to try to work on and try to make more available is distance learning. So we're very aware of it, and yes, we are working on it. The next question is, how many dollars does it take to fund a section of class? And what is the average gift to the foundation? I do not know the average gift to the foundation, but there is a foundation table out here as you leave that you can stop and get any information that you need to have. Like I say, and I want to assure you, I have no idea who contributes to the foundation. I shouldn't know that. We treat all students equally. But as far as the dollar amount, because we also need to pay the teachers' the county's part of the Social Security and the retirement, it takes between $4,000 and $5,000 per semester for a section. So for the entire year, it's someplace between $8,000 and $10,000, and we can add an additional course. So at this time, I want to say thank you so very, very much for your kind attention, for coming. You're going to hear about follow-up meetings, and just thank you for all your support for Walton High School and for Cobb County education.